I love this series so much. And I really wasn't too familiar with the video game as well. So as I was watching the series, I found myself like googling more information to learn about the video game
Yeah.
as well. So I want to know, like, what did you have any sort of knowledge or expectations, or any, did you even know of much about the video game
You know,
before
we're
signing
very
on?
similar in that way. I mean, I'd heard of the game. My son's a gamer, and plays Skyrim and by Bethesda, but I wasn't familiar really with the Fallout universe. I was just familiar with the name of the game, and as once I got the invitation to come and play with these guys, it was a conscious decision on my behalf not to play the game and not to go down the rabbit hole of all the different chat rooms or whatever. Listen to me, I'm so old. I don't know if chat rooms even exist anymore, man. I don't know, man.
I'm sure they do in some aspect.
Yeah. Whatever the conversations are online, and wherever people have those conversations, I didn't really want any of that kind of in my head. I just wanted to come at it from truth and honesty and what was on the page. That's what I know. That's what I know how to do, and I'm glad that I didn't. Yeah.
Yes, and we're introduced to your character immediately at the top of the series, and we meet him in the past, and then from there we see him in the present day, future, like where he is right now. But we don't see, we slowly get to learn more and more of that backstory, but it's something that's not immediately shown to the viewer. A lot of that's left up to our interpretation, at least in the interim, where we learn more. For you, why do you think it was important to kind of see him then and now before going back and seeing what made him who he is now?
To see him then and to see him now, why do I think that's important, right? I think anyone that invests in this visual experience, in this story, it would be a different experience if you only lived in the post-apocalyptic world without exploring the world that existed before, so that you can see, well, this is what we lost, right? To be reminded that this is what we had and this is what was squandered. And to be the bridge between those two experiences was something I was very excited about, and I love that world in Cooper Howard, and I can't really go into it too much more than that, but I hope the audience does as well, because it's infinitely interesting, and it is a nice counterbalance to the bleak landscape that is the wasteland. Yeah.
And honestly, even intrigued me even more, because I'm like, I need to watch more to figure out how possibly this person could go from here to here.
Yeah.
I think that by showing both immediately, it draws you in more to know more about like what actually happened.
Oh, thank you very much for saying that.
Your character Norm seems to be one character who is from the jump very curious. I feel like he's probably the most curious character in this show so far. What do you think his state of mind is initially when everything happens between the two vaults and the fallout from that? Why do you think he's so on edge and intrigued throughout the course of the first episodes?
Yeah, I think, like you said, he's sort of inquisitive, sort of curious, observant, and I think, this is the first time that anybody comes into the vault from anywhere, and to see a sort of maybe scruffier crowd, a couple scars. I think that kind of even as Moises, like I was sitting there like, okay, we're at this wedding scene. Sarita is across from me. Like they're stabbing their forks instead of like you know what I'm saying? It's just a few things that kind of, I think, are piquing his interest, and he's just observing it, and I don't think he thinks too much of it until he starts investigating it, until he sees maybe the crop fields, and when he comes back, it's all hell's broken loose.
And of course, Lucy, of course, leaves the vault very early in the series. But I'm assuming like a lot of that dynamic that exists between Norm, his father, and his sister, even though we don't see a lot of that on screen, it's something that he carries with him. So how, as the episodes go on, how did you build in kind of like that familial dynamic and how that kind of is even involved in the character as things continue to, as he continues to piece things together?
It is tough. Luckily, our first episode we were all together, and Kyle MacLachlan is about the funniest fucking person ever worked with on set. He keeps things light. Ella is amazing, and we had a lot of conversations in rehearsals, and she's English, so I was like, oh, I wonder, I was asking her what accent she's going to use because this is retro futuristic, post-apocalyptic, a lot of 50s inspiration. I was like, oh gosh. So just having about that month and a bit to sort of hang out and talk about what it is that we're making was really special. And I think, just like anything, you have to use other things in your life to sort of connect, even when you don't have scenes together. And luckily, Dave registered, my cousin Chet, is also a fantastic actor, and us two together, he's in love with my sister, Lucy. So, all these dynamics sort of, added a little sauce, a little something to play with, to be able to, to be able to think about stuff. That kind of is what acting is, thinking about stuff.
Yes, yes. And of course, at the end of the season, we stumble upon what's actually going on and what Vault 31 was, what it's comprised of. We're hoping and excited about the potential for season 2 for the show. But in your mind right now, what do you think is happening to Norm? Do you think he's down there? Do you think he's in the pod where his father is? What do you, in your mind, where do you think it goes from here?
I don't see him taking the one and only option. I think, we've seen that he's a great hacker. He gets into things quickly, understands human dynamics quite well. I think, Bud's Bud isn't, or Bud isn't that big of an obstacle for him to sort of figure out what to do, maybe physically, but even just technologically, I think there might be a hope that we just can't see bluntly or clearly just yet.
As far as your character, I'm interested to know if your journey with the character was kind of like ours. Like, did you initially know that your character would have like this, be involved with this big twist that we see in the final episode? Because when we first meet her, we think that she's like this cutthroat villain. And as the episodes go on, we to the final episode of the season, and we learn that in this world, everything is just so gray. Like it's a lot of gray moral areas. So how was your journey for the character? Like, did you see that initially through the scripts, or did that kind of surprise you from the first episode to the last?
So it's a good question. When Jonathan Nolan told me about it and asked me to join, he told me this because I think it would be, not that I would have said no to just playing a villainess, but it definitely helped me get excited to join. So I knew it, but I hadn't seen all the scripts. So I was a little happily shocked when I saw because there's a lot of information at the end of the twists and turns. And so that made me actually super excited that level was going on. But yeah.
And honestly, when we get to that final episode, and honestly, one of those final scenes, it's kind of bittersweet to me, because it's like we really see what this character is essentially about. We know the relationship she had with Lucy's mother, of course. We know so many things, and then at the end, it's like,
we're not. It's like this is it. We're not gonna get
I know.
much more. So how is that for you to kind of it kind of moves such a fast pace at the end. It's like an information overload. And then how do you feel about what she's able to accomplish at the end of the episode?
Well, the fact that she got back the cold fusion and was able to give power to the wasteland, like, I think there's also something about Moldaver. She's very pure in her desire. She wanted to do that. The cold fusion initially was for the wasteland, not for the vault dwellers. And so the fact that, in a weird way, even though it hurt, like, I didn't want her to go, you know what I mean? The fact she was able to do that, it's almost like her necessity of what she's been fighting for 200 years happened.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, I can sit down. Because you never really see her sit like that. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah.
It was like that's her mission. Her mission had been accomplished in that moment. Like, no matter what happened to her, her goal was achieved. And one thing is, we see at the end of the episode that, I guess it's more of like a mercy thing. Lucy shoots her mother, or what was remaining of her mother. But clearly she's been, like this for some period of time. And we don't see a lot about this, so we can kind of piece together things. Why is it that you think that Moldaver essentially, had her for so long? Like, did you piece together a story behind how she was even still in this, how she became a ghoul? Like,
I did. I had to, because it's a good question you have. Like, why, when I am discarding of so much that I don't need for my mission, why am I keeping her? But I knew a bit of backstory that you don't know. I also invented one. But for me, an interesting thing in Fallout series is family or friendship is very important.
Yeah.
Like, and so, even with Lucy and Maximus, like, just in the heat of the moment, the way they'll help each other, or it's the only thing we have left as currency, because there's nothing. And so I understand why she would keep the ghoul there, Lucy's mother. And also, I because of what she said about what Hank did and what Lucy doesn't know, I think it's also important for Lucy to know that this person who doesn't look like a person was part of this whole thing, in a way she didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
You're so welcome.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Trey.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.